ekam aksharam hridiniram
Swati Swayam
likyate katham hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahmamatram yaham aham iti sakshat atmarupena hृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता आत्मनिष्ठो देहं मृण्मयं जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न कस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो रघ्यः दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं. Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we have been meditating on the verses of Anma bodham, Atma bodha. We have been relying on the Tamil translation of the original Sanskrit work, the Tamil translation being done by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. We are in the portion where the process of jnana has already been described by the Acharya, how the triad of knower, knowing, known collapses, how in the rubbing of the jiva with the ever-existing Atma Swarupa, the fire of jnana burns away the vasanas and the jnanodayam comes naturally, self-luminously after the arunodayam, burns away the ignorance. We saw how the process of jnana happens as though a running commentary were being given. We are now in that segment where The Acharya is taking us to how the Jnani, the one who is now merging in the Atman, how exactly that merger takes place, how exactly that union with the Brahman takes place is what is being described in the verses 47 to 53. And we completed 47th verse, which went like Nandrutanai Arivignaniyam Yogiyum ஒன்றும் எலாம் தன்னில் உருவதை ஒன்றான தானெல்லாம் ஆய் உளதை கஞ்ஞான கண்ணினார் தான் காண்பனென்றேதறி. We saw that the jnani, like the person in the waking state, realizes that all the contents of the dream were him only. Like that, the whole of the waking state gets unified, merged in him. And he realizes that he alone is all the objects in the waking state. The Atma Swarupa itself is the objects in the waking state. Now, how do we realize that? So, the difficulty is somewhat relieved by one more verse as to how exactly we find that we are everything. The Atma Swarupa, the self-attentive, self-luminous self, is indeed everything, which we were searching desperately one after another. How do we realize that Atma Swarupa itself is what we were fragmenting and looking in the outside in various objects? How do we realize that? That is covered in this verse with a few clues which we can practically see. Anmave ivulagam ivulagellamagum arpamum ஆன்மாவு கன்னியம்மா இல்லை ஆன்மாவாய் காண்பனெல்லாமும் கடாதிகள் மண்ணின் வேராய் காண்பதும் உண்டோ கழறு ஆன்மாவே இவ்வுலகெல்லாமாகும் அற்பமும் ஆன்மாவு கன்னியம் ஆயில்லை ஆன்மாவாய் காண்பனவெல்லாமும் கடாதிகள் மண்ணின் வேராய் காண்பதும் உண்டோ கழறு. The Drishtantam is very simple, that can the pot and other utensils made out of clay, can they be anything other than clay? Before they were made, the clay was there. Even when they have been made and kept as pot, the clay is still there. Even after their nama and rupa, like sambar chatti, rasat chatti, the nama and rupa are destroyed. Then too the clay continues. So that is one indication. The continuous existence of the clay indicates that all those were made of clay only. And how Sri Krishna says, Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhuta Shayastitah Aham Adischa Madhyamcha Bhutanam Antya Evacha. That means Sri Krishna is saying that he is the very beginning, at the very beginning, middle and end of all creation, all created objects, the entire creation. That indicates that All this is only Atma. The entire creation is only Atma. How is it tested out? Anniyam ஆயில்லை. ஆத்மாவிற்கு அந்நியம் ஆயில்லை is the test that the Atma is present even when the objects are seen. How do you test it out? Very direct test is possible for those who are practicing Atma Uchara. Let's say you are in the airport awaiting a flight out of Bengaluru. There, if you inquire, who is seeing the flight to be boarded? Who is seeing the flight? You are there. So, if self-attention is there, the self-attention exists before you entered the aerodrome. The self-attention exists during your presence in the aerodrome. The self-attention, whether you are attentive or not, it exists even after you have left the aerodrome where you get off. One more simpler test. We all feel we are in respective places, either in Bangalore or outside Bangalore. How do we feel like that? We feel that because we are attached to this upadhi called as Stula Sharira. Why do I say I am in Bangalore? Because I am attached to the Stula Sharira. When I ask, who is it that feels he is in Bangalore? Who am I? The I will come, who am I? That self-attention is there before the thought of Bangalore could arise, during the feeling that I am in Bangalore, and even after the ending of the feeling I am in Bangalore, the self-attention continues. The self-attention can be made exclusive, that it can be made independent rather, to make you realize that with or without Bangalore, self-attention is there. That is the way we realize that this Atma Swarupa, the self-attention, is indeed Bangalore, is indeed Delhi, is indeed the whole of the universe, because the universe is made of objective experiences which all keep changing. The objective experiences keep changing. Does the Atma Swarupa in self-attention, does it undergo any change? That is the test to show that how the clay is unchanging in the pot, in the teapot, in the water vessel. The clay is unchanging. The Nama and Rupa are changing. Therefore, the Nama and Rupa are not real. It is the clay that is real. Similarly, the objective experiences are all changing. Whereas the Atma Swarupa is not changing. Therefore, whatever may be the objective experience, what else can it be other than the Atma Swarupa? We have discussed how Bhagavan gives us a stepping stone. He first shows us that all the sense objects are made of thoughts. Then it is easy for us to understand all the thoughts are nothing but modifications of the I thought. So the whole objective space, including sensory object, is permeated by the clay of the I, the consciousness. What is the exchange we have discussed? To just refresh our memories, there is this solicitor's daughter from Chennai who asks, is this world only made of my thoughts? If I ask, who am I, will the world go away? And Bhagavan responds, let the world inquire from where it is arising. You inquire from where you are arising. And we saw that that solicitor's daughter is quite sharp, and she asks, does it mean that I am unconnected with the world? That let the world go to the dogs, I will get my mukti. That is enough. Then Bhagavan says, no, it's not like that. That when you were asleep, the thoughts were not there, the world was also not there. As soon as you get up from deep sleep, the thoughts arise, and only after the thoughts arise, the world comes into existence. What else can this world be made of except thought energy? They are all thought energy. The whole billions of light years that separate us from the stars, all that space, all those stars are only the thought energy. Bhagavan brings up to that in that talk. What is this thought energy? All thought energy arises only after the I thought arises. Therefore, they are all nothing but the self we are able to arrive. Therefore, the stars, the space in between, all the sensory objects we have, the money, the lack of it, all that is nothing but the Atma Swarupa. That is how the Jnani is now merging, the one who is coming towards the Atma Swarupa. How he is merging? In the previous verse it was said, Ondrum Ulagai, all the worlds is like a dream now merged into one, and he mixes it or he takes it into him first. First you have to consume the world and then take yourself to the source. In this verse, all that world is only you is proved by saying Anmave, Ivulagellam Ahum Arpamum Anmavu Kanniyam Aillai. How do you know that the very substances you felt are going to give you happiness are you yourself? As Bhagavan says to Nagalakshmi Amma, that the sire, the saris, and the beauty are nothing but Atma Swarupa. If you are holding even with effort, when you are holding who am I, you are simultaneously holding all the objects of all the worlds. That is the truth that is contained in this verse and the preceding verse. That when you are holding who am I with effort, so this is the best prayer you can make, because all the solutions to all the problems are contained here. Because all the solutions are made of what? Are made of Atma Swarupa only. All the problems are also made of Atma Swarupa. But that whole area of problems and solutions are transcended by holding the Atma Swarupa. Initially with effort, then as the vasanas subside, there is nothing else to be driven away from the Atma Swarupa. The vasanas have all dried out. Then the Aham Aham Iti Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati, that alone remains. Anmave Yuvulahellam Ahum. To realize this is so beautiful. How we struggle. We feel we are here, we are in such penury, we are not respected, we don't have love of others. So many thoughts come and they belittle us. But who are we? What is this Atma Swarupa? This Atma Swarupa is like king, as we were said earlier. It is like the awake arasan. And that is what we are. That is what the self is. When the self is attending to itself, it is everything. Because another way to know that is there any other there? In the self-attention, can you have any other thought? No. Therefore, Sarvamu Tanai Nandrai. As in Dakshinamurti Stotram, the Adi Shankara would have said, in the last one, Sarvamu Tanai Nandrai, Satrumit Totiratit, Shrevanam, Tannalartham, Sindanam, Dhyanam Ganam, Sarvamam Tanai Nandrai. All this that you perceive is only the self-attentive self. In effort-based who am I, in still I, with effort you are holding all the Aishwaryam, all everything, Sarvamam. As the effort is reduced and removed, as the vasanas are all burnt up in the Jnanagni, then to abide as Sarvamam Tanai, everything is you. Hitler is also you. Gandhiji is also you only. Who, not the Nandakumar who was associated with the three bodies, which is what he will take up next. Why do we now come to the outside world, merge it, and then see that how the merger is complete? The merger is not completed by joining one by one. The merger is completed by understanding that we are everything. The Atma Swarupa is everything. In the previous verse, all the worlds were united as it must have been made out of my chit. Undrum, Unaru, all those things are unified and merged in me. There is a feeling that I only should be all that. That is realized by saying that, can they be apart from you? Can any of the pots or other vessels made out of clay be apart from clay? They are all only the clay. That is the verse there. Anmave ivulahellam ahu. Arpamum anmavu kanniyam aillai. This is a word which Bhagavan again would use throughout the talks. Can you see if that problem or solution is apart from you? Is that thought apart from you? You must exist for that problem or the solution to exist. So the Atma is the reality. Forgetting that, we will be so engrossed with the dimensions of the problem, keep analyzing, and there is this root cause analysis developed by some people, where we will analyze as to what the other object is which has caused this position. Whereas the real root cause is separation from the source and feeling that we are one of the three upadhis or all the three. So the way the union of the jnani takes place is, first all the objects are understood to be oneself as a dream. Then that is completed by understanding these two things, that none of the objects can exist apart from the I. And like all the pots are made of clay, all the objects, time, space, people, and what you thought as Nandakumar, all that is made of the Atma Swarupa. That is verse 48. How does the jnani become one? First he understands all the objects are himself. He himself is all the objects. The merger is complete by understanding I am the real one. I am continuously present. Therefore, they are nothing but the self. Let's see the next verse, 49. The process is brought closer. The objects are left. Why are the objects seen? Because you are identified with the three shariras, three upadhis. Jivan muktan vidwan teruvadan muntannai mevum upadhigunam vittudane mevuvan tannuru satchityenbai தான்கீடம் வண்டினுரு தன்னை உரல் போலதரி ஜீவன் முக்தன் வித்வான் தேருவதன் முன் தன்னை மேவும் உபாதி குணம் விட்டுடனே மேவுவான் தன்னுரு சச்சித்தின்பை தான்கீடம் வண்டினுரு தன்னை உரல் போலதரி. Let me keep the example for later. But the process is simple. Earlier, the objective world was united and understood to be nothing but the self-attentive self. The aerodrome, Bengaluru, the destination, the whole world, all that is nothing but the self-attentive self. And what have you done? Closer home, you have de-identified with your three shariras. Jivan muktan vidwan teruvadan muntannai mevum upadhi gunam vittudane. How can he go to this Swarupa? He can go to this Swarupa only when he leaves the Upadhis. This is another way of dropping the worlds and holding the Atma. The simpler way, தன்னை உபாதி விட்டு ஓர்வது தான் ஈசன் தன்னை உணர்வது says Bhagavan in Upadesha Saram. தன்னை உபாதி விட்டு ஓர்வது. What are these upadis? The upadis are the Sthula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, the Karana Sharira. The Sthula Sharira makes us identify with one body in this world, and because of that we feel we are trapped in a sensory world. Then Bhagavan comes around and says, are you inside a body, or is the body and world inside you? Arey, what is this? Bhagavan is turning the tables there. How can that be true? That the body and this experience that I am seeing the screen is so practical and real to me. How can the body and the world be inside me? That is realized by the process of turning inward. The Jnani says, turn the mind inward. When the mind is turned inward, the whole of this Sthula Loka and whatever else lokas may be there are all present inside me as thoughts. What was 20,000 kilometers away is only a thought away. What was 40 years ago is only a thought away. 40 years ago something happened, or what is the vision for 2030? A company is planning vision for 2030. It is organizing all the visionaries, those who have experience in the industry. What do? In the Sukshma Sharira, they plan how the Sthula events should come about. So the Sthula is contained in the Sukshma. But is the Sukshma unchanging? No, the Sukshma is also changing. But fortunately for the sadhaka, all the Sukshma yojanas or thoughts, they arise only after the I thought arises. And in deep sleep, all these, that is Sthula and Sukshma, are present as Karana Sharira, as Vasanas, which cannot be perceived by the conscious Jiva. Therefore, along with the Vasanas, it goes to sleep. It cannot be conscious of the Vasanas. So the Vasanas are loaded back as soon as it wakes up, and the Vasanas pushes them to see the Sthula Loka in a particular way. But before coming to Swarupa, before coming to the Atma Swarupa, Terumun, before coming to the Atma Jnana, what should the Jnani do? He should de-identify from the three Shariras. How is it? What is the example Drishtantam given? The Drishtantam given is that of Keetam Vandinuru Tanayural Pola Teri. Bhagavan gives some examples for this in the talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. He says he has observed this happening. What is this happening? How does the Jnani turn towards the Swarupa, leaving the entrapments of the three Shariras? The three Shariras are restrictions. The example is that of Keetam, that is the worm, how it becomes like the bug or the fly. Vand. Bhagavan says he has observed this particular Drishtantam in the hills. He has seen that first the Vand, the fly kind of thing or moth kind of thing, it will bring the grub, it will bring the small worm and put it in the nest, put it in that small nest that it has made, small hole it has made. Then it will bite it. The tradition says that it will pierce it with its needle, then go away. The tradition is that that worm will be constantly thinking of when next the Keetam, Brahmara Keetam, that Vand is going to come and pierce it again. It is never going to pierce again, but tradition holds that just by meditating on the beetle, meditating on that which left it, the worm transforms into the beetle. Like that, constantly holding the dropping of the restrictions of the three shariras. See, the grub or the worm, it is put inside the cabin, inside the nest. So it is caught, it is trapped. Whereas the bee itself, the beetle itself is free to go into the outer space. Similarly, the jiva is trapped in the three shariras, three upadhis of Stula, Sukshma and Karana. But constantly meditating on the Guru Upadesha, like we try to do with Ulladhanarpadu and other works of Bhagavan, by constantly meditating, we drop our upadhis. Like that, worm drops its nature of being constricted inside the nest and becomes like the beetle and flies away. Bhagavan gives 2-3 examples in the hill. He has seen exactly these things happen. That a beetle will come, a fly will come, it will bring a small worm, keep it in the nest. After a few days, that small worm will change into beetle and fly away. Now, I wanted to taper off or go into a slightly different angle from this into a contemporary topic. Like, what happens to these drishtantams when science develops? This drishtantam has a hole. This drishtantam is a Vedantic drishtantam, but Bhagavan confirms it. Yes, the beetles do leave the worms, and then the worms get transformed into beetle. So that is how the Sishya, in the presence of the Guru's Nayana Diksha, the words that he shares, and many other contacts, the mental contact primarily, it transforms the Sishya from an Ajnani into a Jnana, into dropping the three Shariras. But I want to meditate a little bit on the Drishtantam and what happens to this Drishtantam. The Drishtantam given here is that the worm becomes like the beetle. Actually, there is a documentary by Richard Attenborough, which I had seen about 30 years back or 25 years at least ago in one of the Discovery Channel browsings. How exactly does the worm become like the beetle is very interesting. What the beetle does in reality or in that itself is not real. In the nature is that the beetle is going to reproduce. It is going to reproduce by laying eggs. Now, it does not want to have the trouble like the birds by bringing food for the young ones again and again. So what it does is that it brings this worm, which will be the food for the young ones, and on top of the egg, on top of the worm, it lays its eggs. So when the eggs of the beetle, they burst open, those children, they feed on the worm which has been left, and then they fly away. So it is not that the worm has become the beetle. It is that the beetle has left its eggs and the eggs hatch. The worm has been left as the food for the beetle, the young ones. And the young ones feed on that. The beetle probably doesn't want to come again and again. And having fed well, they fly away after some time. Now, therefore, the worm doesn't meditate on what was Brahmarakita and become Brahmarakita. Now, a few years later, some scientist is going to tell this. And we may get worried if we don't inquire properly. These drishtantams will always be like that. That science will come and reveal some other aspect of it. For instance, some few days back, I was seeing this video where one of the modern philosophers called Bernardo Kastrup and Michael James from our London Center, London. He was with Sadhvam Swamigal for many years. They have a very nice discussion about Bhagavan's teachings and the philosopher's point of view. They go here, there, and then at one point, the philosopher says, your method seems to be very selfish. that the self-enquiry seems to be very intent on getting mukti for the individual, and it seems to be unconcerned with what happens to anybody else. Then Michael James says, no, it's not like that. See, there is this drishtantam where Bhagavan's compassion is coming out, where in the hornet's nest, when he disturbs the hornet's nest, he gives his leg, which disturbed the hornet's nest, and the hornets come and bite that leg alone and go away. And later on, when some other disciple, Muruganar Swamigal, asks why it was a unknowingly only you have hit it. Why you should trouble yourself or extend such compassion when it was unknowingly done? Bhagavan says, what kind of mind it is if it cannot have that compassion, even though the error was done unknowingly. Something like that. Therefore, that incident is narrated as revealing Bhagavan's compassion to the hornets whose nest was disturbed. Then the philosopher, who is also a scientist, he turned. By then, the argument had got heated, so he wanted to put something. So he said, I understand the spirit in which you are saying the whole story. In Kannada, they say, Bedsheet talked to audio. That means cover and then deliver the blows. He said later, I understand the spirit in which you are saying. But see, each of those hornets, when they leave the needle in his thigh, they all had a very torturous death. So Bhagavan is not showing any compassion there, because 100 or so hornets must have had an anguishing death. And what I shared this in our satsang, and I would request Akka to bring out her part very beautifully, which she had shared with us. I will just share my part. How these drishtantams we have to have with a pinch of salt is what I say. See, later on you may realize that the Kita never had meditation on the Brahmara and never became the Brahmara. It was only the eggs of the Brahmara that came out of as the Brahmara. It doesn't matter. It's only an example. We definitely will become jnanis if you keep doing self-enquiry constantly. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? As the Guru has done Upadesham and the Guru remains as the self. Definitely, whether the Kita becomes Brahmara or not, definitely the Ajnani will become the Swarupa Jnani, leaving the three bodies. So the Drishtantam, what happens? It has to be taken with a pinch of salt. So the Drishtantam should not be taken actually, literally. So in this, the case of the hornets also, how self-enquiry is not selfish. The explanation I had in mind, Akka's, is very beautiful, and she had described that to us just 2 days back when we were coming out of the satsang. I requested her to share in her sharing that particular way in which the drishtantam can be made right again. My understanding from the Atma Ucharam and my experience is that when we do Atma Ucharam, the first things that are dropped is my personal thoughts. The personal thoughts belonging to this fellow Nandakumar will be the first thing to be dropped. Then what happens? Whatever contents are there in Ulladanarpadu, they will be the thoughts that come. That is Irattaigal, Muppudigal, Endrum Ondru Patri, Irupavam, Avondredendru. As we go deeper, the Nanavam Jnanam, Ajnanamam, then Tanmai Undel, Munnilai, Padarkaigal, Tamulavam, Tanmayin Unmayai, Tanaindu, Tanmayarin. Only after the first person arises, the second and third person arises. If the first person is held and his ego is removed, there are no billions of people. There is only one unified I. In Atmacharam, the individuality is dropped much earlier. You can't go into the deeper aspects of self, forget about self-realization. Unless the individuality of everyone you see is merged. If I feel there are 15 people in the self-enquiry session or 14 people, first I should ask, who is the one who is feeling there are 14 people? The answer will come for me. When I do who am I, all our eyes have a single eye inside me. All our eyes have a single eye inside each one of you. That is what I hold. That means the difference between me and the people who are participating vanishes there. And unless the ego is surrendered like this, there is no way the self is going to reveal itself. Unless one is willing to let go of one's individuality and merge with the common Lord, merge with the 8 billion people and other living beings and all non-living beings also, because in self there is no division as living and non-living beings. The self alone is, we are not apart from them also. So absolutely how it can be selfish? It can't be selfish. Bhagavan says, somebody asked specifically, is this self-enquiry not selfish? Bhagavan says, the self which we are meditating on includes the whole creation. If you call the whole creation's benefit being selfish, then that selfishness is good, he says. Because the self has enveloped everybody. One who is self-realized benefits the whole creation. If you consider that as selfishness, let it be, he says. But Akka's explanation is very, very beautiful. I would like you to wait for that and listen to it. The object being that there will be many drishtantams, and science may disprove some drishtantams also. Like in Who Am I? It is said that the whole world is created by the mind and withdrawn into the mind every moment or from waking and deep sleep. The example is just like the spider spins its web and consumes its web in the evening, takes its web back in the evening. 20 years ago or 15 years, 17 years ago maybe, when I was discussing Who Am I with someone, this particular portion I was reading, then that person said, sir, the spiders don't eat their webs. The webs remain in the evening. I said, that's only an example. You have to go with the actuality. That when you do Who Am I, the whole world is also absorbed into the Atma Swarupa. As we have seen in the 47, 48, 49th verses. The 49th verse is Jeevan Muktan Vidvan Eruvadan Muntannai Mevum Upadi Gunam Vittudane Mevuvan Tannuru Satchittinbai Tankidam Vandinuru Tannai Ural Poladari. What is our real form? Our real form is Sat, Chit, Inbam, Irundu, Olir, Anandam. It is the real happiness. We may feel we will get happiness if we buy a 1 crore property. But is it real? Is it going to be with us in deep sleep? No, it is not going to be with us in deep sleep. So the Nama Uru, Sat, Chit, Inbam, Nama, Uru. These 5 put together is the world. The Nama Uru is the unreal part and the Sat, Chit, Inbam is the real. Hold the real and let go of the Nama Uru. In this verse, that is reached, the Satchit Inbam is reached by dropping the 3 shariras, the Stula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira and Karana Sharira. Karana Sharira, how do we drop? We wait for thoughts to arise from the Karana Sharira. We put the heat of attention on the Karana Sharira by doing Who Am I. When we are holding that I, in that heat, the vasanas, they rise up as thoughts. When they rise up as thoughts in the Sukshma, let it go and put your attention on Who Am I. Who Am I puts heat on the Karana Sharira. In that heat, the vasanas rise up as thoughts. Let the thoughts go, continue the heat, the Jnanagni, till the Karana Sharira is exhausted. And once the 3 Shariras are detached from, one is Jeevan Muktan, one is Swarupa Jnani. One understands that oneself is the real existence, happiness. Real consciousness, existence, happiness. One need not search anywhere outside One's own nature is the Sat Chit Inbam, is what one realizes. The example given is how the Kitam becomes the Brahmara. Brahmara Kita Nyaya. But really, in nature, it doesn't happen like that. But for millennia, it has been believed that the worm becomes, and it has been given as an example. But we should keep the example with some distance and go for the reality. What it means, if you really meditate and drop the three upadhis, then the restrictions, as the worm had the restrictions inside the small nest or that gudu, like that we are trapped inside these restrictions. The moment we continue to do Atma Vichara, we become one with the Satchit Inbam, which is limitless. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. The Jnani becomes one with that happiness, Satchit Inbam. Dropping the limitations of the worm, dropping the limitations of the three upadhis. This is the intent. So, whenever we get to examples, we should not be overly anxious to disprove the example. Those studies would have been based on science of so many years ago. And the modern scientists may know that spiders don't spin the web, don't eat the web in the night. They may also know that the worms don't really transform themselves. There is this transformation of the larva pupa into butterfly, isn't it? There is the transformation of the larva pupa into moth. That we can take if you want. But the Brahmarakita Nyaya, you may find some scientists coming and saying that that's not true. It doesn't really matter. It was only an example to show that if you constantly hold the Nididhyasana, and in our case, if you constantly hold the Atma Vicharam, then no doubt that we will transcend the three limitations of the Stula, Sukshma and Karana and be abiding in the Atma Swarupa, which we will see in even better detail in the coming 4 verses. The next verse being Adhyatma Ramayana essence, the 50th verse is the Adhyatma Ramayanam's essence, how Sita is regained, how the peace is regained is there in that verse. We will, with Bhagavan's grace, meditate on that in the coming weeks. Let us sit in Atma Vicharam till 8 o'clock and then look forward to listening to Akka, especially what she shared with us to show that in Bhakti Marga, we can look at the same event, even though it has been put in new light by Kastrup, with even better clarity. Akka had come out with that. I would like her to share that if it's possible for her. Let us sit in Atma Vicharam till 8 o'clock. Ujjwalji will rely on you. Thank you.
Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we, in this part of the satsang, we continue the meditation on the verses of Atma bodham, on which Sri Nandakumar ji has meditated for us, for our sakes, in the last 40-45 minutes. And today he has taken us mainly on the verse of crossing the three, the Sthula, the Sukshma, and the Karana Sharira. That is the final verse on which we have been meditating with Nandakumar ji. And if we look at the crossing of the Sthula, now he gave us the story of the hornets, and he also gave us the scientific, there is a scientific approach to the story of the hornets, that they die after they sting something. They have to leave behind their sting, and they die when they leave behind the sting. They may also have some physical suffering. And also, similarly, he gave us another example of the Brahmarakita Nyaya, which is spoken of in this very verse. And when he spoke of that, he said that we are having the actual science telling us that this Brahmarakita Nyaya is not true. That actually the beetle does not help the worm to convert into a beetle, but makes the worm food for its young ones, which in turn become beetles, which feed on this worm and become beetles. Now, when we look at this is in the sthula. Science is in the sthula area. It is delving into the gross area. But if we cross over from the sthula into the sukshma, if we go from the gross into the subtle, if we go from the physical world into the mental world, in the mental world, different principles hold for us. One of the principles which holds for us is faith. In the mental world, faith holds for us. And in that faith, what do we say? We say that anything is possible. Anything is possible. Anything is possible. Faith is like magic. The magician may turn a hat into a rabbit into a hat, or anything. Now, how is that possible? That happens in our mind space. We see it happening in the mind space. It is not actually a gross happening. And if we look at that from the perspective of faith, a different perspective comes to us. And so when Nandakumar ji was narrating the story of the hornets, I told Nandakumar ji also that I have meditated on this story quite frequently. We have depicted it 2-3 times in our dance dramas also, even very early as in 1982 when we did a drama with Ramana Balakendra children then. I think it was 82 or 83 on Bhagavan and animals. The hornets incident was one of the incidents to be depicted over there. And later it has been depicted again in one of our dance dramas, Mukta Ramana, to indicate that one has to be ready to accept the consequences of one's actions, whether one does it consciously or not. This was Bhagavan's message, that if one is doing something, even unconsciously, if one has hurt somebody, one has damaged someone's home or done something which is unwarranted, one must repent for it. So this is one must have repentance for having done something wrong. This was the aspect which was explored in that dance drama, which is interpreted as Michael James as compassion. The repentance is the compassion, the caring for the other. So in that realm, but when I heard that story, Nandakumar ji saying that the hornets would have died, this never struck me. I never knew the fact that the hornets would have died. So for me, the angle was that one angle was that Bhagwan was to go towards that tree, the mystical tree. He didn't go towards the mystical tree. He was stopped from going towards the mystical tree, and he made it a rule that nobody else should try and go there. And people who did try did have various difficulties, which he helped them to cross and somehow brought them back to the ashram. So that aspect was strong in the mind. The other aspect was that one must hold responsibility for one's actions. That was another aspect. But suddenly, when Nandakumar ji said that the hornets died, not as a matter of logic, but in a moment, what struck me was that Bhagavan has said, first of all, Bhagavan has said, death in Arunachala is mukti. And then if the hornets have bitten Bhagavan and died, that means they have all been liberated. They have all been given mukti instantly. So what did Bhagavan do for them? He actually gave them liberation. This was the thought which came to me. So in the Sukshma or in the faith, the perspective has become very different. Similarly, if we look at the Brahmarakita Nyaya also, I remember earlier Nandakumar ji giving an example of one of the devotees in the Girivalam saying, ice cream has become me. Once I have eaten the ice cream has become me. So if we look at that, whether the Kita meditated on the Brahmara and became the Brahmara, or whether the Kita was eaten by the Brahmara and became the Brahmara, ultimately the Kita became Brahmara only. In the Brahmarakita Nyaya, the Kita was not left as Kita. The Kita never remained as Kita. So the Kita only remained as Brahmara, either by thought or by physically being consumed by the young ones of the Brahmara. The Kita became Brahmara. But if we look again at the analogy from another mental perspective, what happens? We can see that the Kita, Nandakumar ji said, is filled with fear because it is thinking that the Brahmara will come and again sting it or bite it. And out of that fear, it is constantly thinking about the Brahmara. Now, we do not know whether the Kita actually lives in fear of the Brahmara or not. Science has not yet told us. Science has not yet studied the mental condition of the Kita when it was staying inside as captive. Whether it was to be eaten and therefore in fear, or whether it was stung and therefore in fear, the fact of the situation of the Kita, the mental situation of the Kita, is not known to science. Now, what is the mental situation? Could be the mental situation of the Kita, which ultimately turns it into the Brahmara, is given to us through an instance in Ramayana, in Adhyatma Ramayana, as Nandakumar ji said, our next verse is going to be Adhyatma Ramayana. So, in Adhyatma Ramayana, there is the instance of Maricha. Ravana goes to Maricha and tells Maricha, you must now go in the form of the Maya Mriga, the magic deer, and entice Sita so that I can capture Sita and get Rama to come and battle with me so that I can kill Rama. Or Rama may die just in separation from Sita. Maricha says, whoever has put this idea into your head is certainly your enemy. He wants to see you dead. He or she wants to see you dead because don't go and play around with Rama. He says, I have been followed by a single arrow, and after that, do you know, O Ravana, in what condition I live? I live in eternal fear of Rama. Whether I turn left, I see Rama. Whether I turn right, I see Rama. If I go forward, I see Rama. If I turn back, I see Rama. Above me, I see Rama. And I'm trembling in fear. I'm all the time afraid of Rama. But of course, he says, then Ravana says, if you don't go, I will kill you. And then he says, okay, in that case, it is better for me to die at the hands of Rama. Let me die at the hands of Rama then rather than die at your hands. Similarly, we find that the hornets, which would have anyhow died one day stinging somebody or the other, Bhagavan allowed them to sting him and finished all their karma in that very moment. So this is how we can look at, or we are automatically made to look at something which logic, which is a sthula. Logic is sthula. Logic is limited to the sthula. It works within that realm only. What it can see, what it can prove. But faith or the sukshma can transcend the sthula. When we go into a dream world, in a moment a Brahmara can become a Kita and a Kita can become a Brahmara. Even the Brahmara can become the Kita, or Sharda can become a Kita, or Sharda can become a Brahmara, or the whole world can become only a group of Brahmaras. Anything is possible in the dream world. So when we go into the dream world, when we go into the mind, into the realm of the mind, we find that all the logic of the Stula world is automatically destroyed. When we go into, therefore, when Bhagavan says you look at the world only as being thoughts, then we are no longer disturbed by any phenomenon in the Stula world. Nothing matters anymore because it doesn't even exist. Its logic doesn't exist. Its rules do not exist in our dream world, which is our mind world. So when we cross from the Stula to the Sukshma, all that is left behind. But then we have to cross from Sukshma also to the Karana, isn't it? That is what Nandakumar ji pointed out to us as belonging to this verse. We have to cross over from the Sukshma. We cannot hold the Sukshma alone also because, see, the logic can be conquered by faith. A great sage told me in the very early stages of my sadhana that he told me through logic you establish that the self alone exists. Establish through logic that the self alone exists. I said I am not capable of such great logic. So he himself proved to me through a series of logical statements which cannot be refuted under any circumstance. At least my mind was not capable of refuting it. My intellectual capacity was not capable of refuting it. So I said, yes, this is true. So what you're saying is true. He said, let me now disprove to you that the self alone exists. And with equally powerful logic, he disproved the existence of the self. And I was amazed. I said, this logic is also irrefutable. So what does one do? He said, I can again disprove this logic. But the process is endless. Don't rely on logic for self-enquiry. Don't rely on logic for self-awareness. So go with, he said, of course, go with faith. But then faith also must be transcended through anubhava. Because faith is still in the Sukshma realm. Faith is still in the realm of the mind. For faith also, there is an object on which the faith is there. Even though we carry forward this journey with faith in the presence of the self. But Bhagavan says we must have the experience, the anubhava of the self. And that is why self-inquiry becomes such a beautiful, such an irrefutable king of a way. Because it is really king, because here all else is simply set aside and attention is turned on to the self and the self alone by turning attention on the core of the mind. By questioning the core of the mind, by holding the attention completely on the core of the mind, not allowing it to go to any of the other aspects of the mind, not allowing it to, you know, enjoy its own sukshma nature through delving on the thoughts, by understanding, oh, what a beautiful experience this is, what a beautiful thought this is. Because when a beautiful thought comes, next moment a bad thought will also come. Anything can come. This mind is capable of anything. So it has to be transcended through the question of holding on, getting into and across the karana by holding on to the I thought. So that is the anubhava. Bhagavan says, in Ramana Gita, Bhagavan says, in self-enquiry, the anubhava happens right in the beginning. The moment one asks oneself, who am I? The mind is stilled. It has to be stilled. Though the anubhava happens in the beginning, that anubhava is not steady. Meaning to say, it may be so very fractional that initially we do not even recognize that the anubhava has happened. But what is it that has kept us going in this path? What is it that keeps us going in this path? It is only anubhava. But for experience, nothing can keep us to something. So the grace and anubhava are not different from each other. The grace which manifests as anubhava in our lives, knowingly or unknowingly, helps us to stick to the enquiry and deepen the anubhava, to deepen the experience and cross the karana sharira as well. So there are the three shariras. There is the gross world which disappears in our sleep world, along with its science and logic and everything that we may discuss or argue. Everything goes for a six in the dream world. It has its own illogical logic. It has its own illogical rules. It has its own infinitesimal possibilities, because the mind has infinite possibilities of creating and destroying anything and everything. So that is the power of the mind. So Bhagavan calls it Adishaya Shakti, but that also has to be transcended. One should not be caught in its beauty or its variety or even in its sorrow. It can catch us even through sorrow. No way we should get caught in it, but we should get back. Now, whether the spider actually swallows the web or not, Bhagavan is giving us a way to swallow the web which we have created. The web of the mind which we have created, that web can be swallowed by the I thought. This web, this mental web, can certainly be swallowed by the I thought. This is the anubhava which we have in Atma Vichara. So this spider of the I thought or the ego, it has created a web and it can swallow that. It is capable of swallowing that whole web. It does so in deep sleep, though not consciously. So Bhagavan says, do it consciously. Swallow this, withdraw it into yourself, and then get back. Let the I also get back to its source by questioning itself, by questioning, repeated questioning of who am I, who 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 projects, who withdraws, who is the basis of all this process, who am I. When one keeps holding that, that grace becomes steady in its flow. It becomes apparent in its flow, and it will reveal itself in all its fullness. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana.
Namo Ramana, that was extraordinary. Namo.